Welcome back to Trans Connections. Allison here, and I am totally fangirling it up for my guest today. I cannot tell you how excited I am to have her on. We both started transitioning right around the same time, and for me at least, she has become a bit of a social media celebrity. Let's go ahead and get started. Why don't you introduce yourself?
I am super excited to be on the show. Thank you. Hi, my name is Billie. I am a 36-year-old trans woman who lives in Canada. And I am currently residing in what is known as Treaty 7 territories, if we're acknowledging the land that we come from. I am not obviously, because you can't see what my face looks like, but I'm descended from colonizers, and so I'm constantly battling with like how to live on the land and be respectful of the people who came for us, and doing a lot of reconciliation because it's tough. This is getting away from me, so I'm going to transition away. Haha. There's a little transition joke. But anyway, hi, my name is Billie. This is the most awkward thing I've ever done now. But it's a great pleasure to be on your show. And it's nice to see you, Allison. Hello. Wow.
Very nice to meet you, Billie. No worries. I appreciate you coming on. This show is all about...
Sorry, talked over you.
That's all right. All right. So I really appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I've been following you for most of my transition. I think I found you almost immediately when I started just searching for transgender people on Instagram. Wow. And I don't know why, but I connected pretty quickly. And the more that I started just observing and being that silent watcher that so many people are on Instagram, I discovered that I really felt you were authentic, and I really appreciated it. So it was a nice option for me to kind of just see someone else going through very similar things that I was going through in the moment, whether it be trying to get HRT or going through surgery prep, all of those types of things. So it was very nice to be able to see that. So I appreciate you coming on. I'm excited to have you on. Before we started, we were talking about shopping. I certainly appreciate shopping, but not as much as other trans women do, or women in general. I certainly do like going out, though, and going clothes shopping. I know you just finished your June dresses.
I did, yeah.
Which I thought was kind of cool, showing all of the different dresses. That was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, that was a great fun time in June. I've really sort of, gone through the gamut of before transition, just being like, I guess clothing is something I have to wear so I don't get arrested when I go outside. Don't really care what it is or what it looks like. I was forever in a graphic tee, blue jeans, and I always was that person who's like, I don't care about shopping. And it was really just a lot of like me hiding like jealousy and dysphoria and not really admitting what the desires of my heart, as it were, to be who I really was. And since I came out, it's just been such a whirlwind of figuring out different styles, different types of looks, different, colors and patterns and cuts of things. And it's been a lot of fun. And dresses were something that I gravitated to quite early on because they were a little bit more forgiving. I found as I was sort of, waiting for HRT to do its thing. And then especially it lined up really nicely with this June, recovering from a surgery. It was very nice to just like be comfortable in a dress. And I have some pretty cute ones, I think, and I'm always looking out for more cute dresses.
Very nice. I only own 2 dresses. I think the first one I bought was almost immediately before I actually started going at quote unquote full time. I'm not sure if that's really the right way to, I hate saying that, but that's just how the only way I can know to describe it. When I came out at work and was allowed to live myself authentically all the time. I bought the dress literally right before that, and I can't wear it to work because we have a dress code at work, but I've worn it a few times, and then I found another one, Goodwill, best place to go shopping ever, and I've worn it a few times, but aside from that, dresses, I always wore blue jeans and a t-shirt before, And I love wearing blue jeans still. They fit so much better now, though.
Yes, it's worth it to lose the pockets, I'd say. Although sometimes I'm like, damn it, no
I,
pockets.
I do find myself wishing I had pockets. The back pocket is nice, but you can only put so much in there. And when you take up one of them with a cell phone, it makes it that much harder.
Exactly.
So, what types of experiences have you had with shopping? We were talking a little bit about shopping before we started recording here. What kind of experiences have you had with shopping?
I feel very lucky to hang on. I'm getting a weird buzz from somewhere downstairs, so I have to go sort that out. You'll have to edit this chunk out.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, I'm back. There's a super old fridge that like kicked on and was just like, meow. So maybe this all gets left in as a wonderful Easter egg for the listeners. But to answer your question about shopping, I've had very good experiences so far. I've been very lucky to have not encountered any sort of overt transphobia or discrimination while I was out and about. And one of the first times I went shopping, actually, you told a story off air about a friend taking you shopping and how, exciting it was and just sort of kind of whirlwind it was. And I had a very similar experience. I matched up with this gal through Skipping Stone, which is actually the place I fundraised for June Dresses. It's a local Calgary-based foundation that helps trans people and their families find resources and get connections to a whole bunch of different things, but we can talk about them a little bit later maybe if you want. But I met up with this lady who took me out shopping for my first time, and she was just like, we have a little bit of budget for clothing. We're going to go to a couple thrift stores and we're just going to try stuff on. And she kind of just took me through whirlwind style, was like, here's how you do it. You're going to grab stuff, and even if you think you maybe don't like it, you're just going to grab it as a maybe. And then when you try it on, you can decide it's a no. And, she was so great, and she just, like, kept, shoving clothing through the little changing stall, being like, try this on. I think this will be good. Do you like this? You don't like this, do you? And I'll be like, I was just so, like, blown away that she just, like, sort of swept me up, took me around, and made me feel super comfortable. And it was just like the discomfort of going into a store by myself. I was really worried about that. And I just was like, okay, I'm just going to follow her around and she's going to be great. And I got a bunch of items, some that I liked right away and some that I was like, I don't really know, but I was glad I kept, because later on, as HRT did its slow sort of magic, they fit a little bit differently. And it was like, oh, wait, I like all these things. And so that's probably one of my favorite shopping experiences, was one of my first ones. And I'm so grateful to, Skipping Stone for hooking me up with this gal who's, just made it such a wonderful and affirming experience. I think everyone should get that.
That is such an awesome story. Very similar story. I had a friend that she was like the first person that I came out to. And unfortunately, me and her are not friends any longer. But she literally was such a big part of my early on transition. And she called me up like 2 days after I came out to her and was like, hey, I'm going to get my nails done and you're coming with me. And she said before that, like, hey, you're going to come over here. We've got our appointment at this time. And then, so I showed up an hour and a half before, because that's when she said to come over to her house. I showed up, and then she was like, all right, we're going to Goodwill because I want to go shopping and you need some clothes. And literally did the exact same thing, just like started handing me stuff. I had absolutely no idea what I was looking for. I still didn't know what my style was. I was looking for a style, I guess. And so she just was like, you're going to try on all of this stuff. And maybe you'll like some of it, maybe you won't. And a lot of it you're going to just buy because I tell you you're going to buy it. And then if you never wear it, then it didn't cost you anything because it's Goodwill and it probably costs like $3 anyways. And you can always go donate it again anyways. So it was such a great experience. And she did the same thing, just throwing stuff at me and telling me to try it on. I wasn't allowed to say no to anything. And it was a great experience. I've been back to Goodwill many times since. A lot of the stuff from that first day I've never worn again just because it wasn't my style. But I got to learn that it wasn't my style and decide what I wanted to from there. So, yeah, totally great experience. And same idea. Not a single person in the Goodwill ever looked at me. It's such a great experience for my first time going out and shopping for myself. And I think Goodwill or any thrift store in general is a great place to go for that type of clothing shopping. I mean, besides the fact that most people go like Halloween shopping and such at thrift stores like that, and oftentimes they're buying clothes for the opposite gender during that time frame. So I think that like it just is the normal idea in a lot of places like a Goodwill or any thrift store in general. Do you have any other stories about shopping or any other experiences with like even later on with shopping or being out or anything in that general idea?
I went out shopping a couple of times. The first time I went out by myself, I had a tiny little mini panic attack because I was like, I don't know what I'm doing and it's so crowded. And this was before COVID times. So it was just like a normal being in a crowded store panic attack and not a COVID flavored one. And I was just, I went in and grabbed like a couple things and then just like bailed. And I just remember feeling like, why did I get so nervous? Why was it so awkward? And I just had to build my own confidence and kind of go back in and like test the waters again. And I just tried and I just went a couple times more, and it took me a long time to get comfortable going in by myself. I had a couple of times where the palms were all sweaty. I was nervous. I'm about to start devolving into Eminem lyrics if I keep going on this metaphor, so I'll abandon it. But I am just, I was just like I had to get over that fear, and it took me a couple tries, but I ended up doing it, and now I like have no compunction. I'll just like walk into any old store and be like, I prefer to like browse on my own. I'm still a little bit hesitant to have like a stranger help me or like, can I help you find anything? I'm just like, oh no, I'm just browsing, thanks. And but that's just mostly when I'm shopping. It's not a social experience with people for me. I'm just like, I want to get in and do it at my own pace, unless I go with like a group of people. So I think the lesson that I learned from clothes shopping and from thrifting and from looking through donations and stuff is that even if you look through a bunch of clothes and you find nothing you like, you find absolutely zero items, then that still helps you narrow down the search terms of what your style is, where it's like, oh, actually this color does not work for me, so I will maybe edit out this color from what I search for, or you know what, I like the way this pattern looks at me, but I don't like the cut of this thing, and so I can look for this pattern in a different cut. And I found that also keeping an eye on other people, especially we talked about Instagram earlier, like looking at what people are posting for outfits and thinking like, oh, is that something I would like? Is that type of dress something I like? I like her style. I don't like that person's style. Just sort of helps you narrow down the focus. And it takes a while, but it can be fun to do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Like I said, the first, I think it was like 5 or 6 items that I purchased, I don't wear anymore. They're still in my closet. I don't know if they're more of like a reminder to myself of that's not my style, or if it's like nostalgia, like, oh, those were the first items I bought for myself. And so I just don't want to get rid of them. Either way, like, it's a really great learning experience for yourself. And that was what my friend told me too. Like, don't worry about whatever you're looking at. Like, you still need to figure out what your style is. And there's nothing wrong with figuring that out.
Mm-hmm.
I think most women are changing their style every single time they go shopping. So
Absolutely.
just welcome to the club at that point.
Yeah, and if you see somebody looking great, you want to copy their outfit a bit, and so you look for that outfit, and maybe that doesn't look good on you, but it looked good on them, and you have to keep boiling down your preferences until you get what you get.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. You talked about your sweaty palms. I had the same experience the first few times. I think I intentionally went grocery shopping, to be honest, the first few times I went out by myself, because I could go to a grocery store that I knew I would not run into anyone I knew, and I could literally just be focused on getting a few fruits and vegetables and some lunch meat or whatever for the week, and then go home and not have to make it a long trip shopping or trying things on or anything like that. Be very, very nondescript about what I was doing or who I was. And that gave me the confidence to be able to go into a like women's clothing store or the women's section of any store and feel comfortable shopping there. It certainly had my fair share of weird looks the first few times, but after that, when I realized nobody was actually going to say anything or do anything about it, they were just trying to understand what was happening. Before long, they very quickly went to the back of my mind, and it didn't matter anymore. I do remember I had to go wedding shopping. One of my best friends was getting married, and him and his fiance at the time, now wife, I'd come out to them before he asked me to be in his wedding, and then he asked me to be in his wedding, and from the very beginning it was, how do you want me, like, I'm not out yet, like, I literally just came out to you, like, the whole world doesn't know who I am yet, and it's your wedding. How do you want me to dress? How do you want me to present? I will do whatever you want me to do. And they were super supportive. They literally told me, do whatever you want, like, however you feel comfortable. So I had to go wedding dress shopping. I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never been, like, remotely close to dress shopping, let alone, like, being, like, groomsmaid, I think is what they're called. Standing next to my best friend up at the up on the altar, essentially, and super supportive. His wife, Kristen, literally told me, take photos and send them to me, and I will help you out. Even though she was in Colorado and I was in Texas, she was super supportive and extremely friendly, and made it so easy for me to be able to find a dress that would fit in her wedding. And she didn't care what other people thought while I was up there supporting them getting married.
Oh, I love that.
And, like, that was such a great experience. I think I walked into Nordstrom. And I will support Nordstrom till the day I die because of this specific experience. But not a single person in there had any issues whatsoever. They did my first bra fitting for that dress.
Oh, wow.
They helped me find a dress that would fit perfectly. They let me try on multiple dresses in their fitting room without any questions or concerns. Brought in several different people to help me out, and like I said, not a single person said anything whatsoever. They were so supportive.
I love that.
And I will 100% be a supporter of Nordstrom from here on out because of that. So definitely great experience for my dress shopping.
I love that, and I wish, when you told me that story, you can hear it on the tape, but I was like, oh wow, that's amazing. And then I just had this thought in my head where it's like, I wish that more places were like that. Like, 'cause that should be the normal thing. That shouldn't have to be amazing. And it's great that Nordstrom did that for you. I'll happily buzz market them, on your show. If you want to be sponsored, Nordstrom, you know where to look us up. But just the fact that, like, the idea that clothing should have no gender, and if people are wanting to buy anything, anyone should be able to walk in and buy any type of clothing that fits them. And I think that's the way it's starting to trend, but there's still such a long way to go. And it's so, like, I long for the days when somebody can tell a story, no matter what their gender presentation, and be like, I went into X store and bought Y piece of clothes, and that's the end of my story because I was just shopping. What's new with you? But it's still at that stage where we remark about all the little tiny times we get affirmed or we get accepted, and I just long for the better future as we're building it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think we have a very long ways to go, but I look forward to the days of I bought this dress for a wedding and then that's the end of the story. And it's not like, man, I support Nordstrom so much because they had no problem supporting me. Like, Nordstrom supports everybody and that's the end of it. And it doesn't matter what store you walk into, like, they're going to support you. Who cares? Like, that's not the point of the story. Whereas in my story, that literally is the point of the story, that, like, these people did a great thing to be able to help me feel comfortable in a really uncomfortable situation. And not just uncomfortable for me, but I'm sure it wasn't comfortable for them either in that moment. Like, here's a young woman who has no idea what she's doing. And I'm literally was 30 years old at that time.
Wow,
like,
yeah.
I'm not a teenager, and I'm acting like a teenager, having never had, like, a bra fitting even at 30 years old. And so, like, that certainly isn't a normal interaction for them, I'm sure. And so it was great that they just, like, they acted as if it was throughout the whole interaction. And I felt like when I walked out of there, I had no problem. I'm pretty sure I spent like $200 more than I wanted to on a dress. And I just was like, I just appreciate this interaction so much. And, like, I don't have to go play the game and see if I get lucky again.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with a store called Simon's here in Canada. I think it's Canada-wide. It doesn't matter. But I, like, very, very early on, it must have been like a week after I came out. So I came out in December 2018, and I did not start hormones until November 2019. So it was almost a whole year before I started hormones. I went into Simon's a week or so after I came out and just, like, bought a couple things. And it was one of those very tense, sweaty palms time. And I went in and everyone was super nice. They didn't blink at me when I was in the women's section or I needed to use the change room. And it was, like, such a great experience that I emailed Simon's after. Like, I went to their website, leave a comment or whatever, and I just sent them an email being like, thank you for being so supportive. And it was just like, I don't know, because maybe stores just need to hear when it is a very positive and affirming experience, so that they're like, hey, let's do more. Let's do that more.
Absolutely. I mean, I have heard horror stories at, like, Victoria's Secret of people walking in, like, trans women walking in and being told that they can't try on bras even at Victoria's Secret because they Victoria's Secret has this really strict no men policy, even though a trans woman isn't a man. And that's, like, it's a really scary thing to walk in and say, hey, I want to try on these clothes. And you don't know if they're going to treat you like they treat every other woman, or if they're going to treat you as if you're different than every other woman.
Right.
And that is a really scary thing. I personally have never had a bad experience at Victoria's Secret either. I've heard really bad things, but maybe I'm just fortunate and I'm able to pass enough that they don't question it. But I have heard horror stories in different places. And that is, like, you never know walking into a store how that's going to be. So it's nice that every time I walk in and I don't have an issue, it just, like, builds that confidence just a little bit more to the point where now I'm very much like, nothing's going to happen. I'm not worried about it.
I love that. That's so good.
I'm less, like, on edge of what's going to happen today and more on edge of, man, I hope I get what I want and not, not the normal person thoughts.
There's times when you go...
Can I find what I need today? Yeah. Probably. Hopefully.
Sometimes you go in and you get nothing and you're just like, I hate every piece of clothes that's ever been made. And I feel gross and I don't like shopping anymore. And then, like, the next day you're like, but maybe I could buy something nice. Hope springs eternal.
I guess I'll try again.
Try again. Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome. I don't know that I've ever gone out of my way. I probably should do that more frequently to tell different companies that I've had a great experience with them or their employees. I certainly haven't. I should, though, because it probably brings recognition. I know at work when people do that, we appreciate it as a manager. So I would love to. Should probably start doing that myself.
Yeah, I feel
preach what I expect.
I feel like the only time people, not the only time, this is a generalization, but most of the time when people contact a store, it's to complain. And so I feel like, if I can have a chance to give somebody a little bit of brightness in their day and be like, hey, I had a really great time in your store. Thanks. Even that can go a long way, because I can just imagine like being somebody who goes through a store's like email list of like contact us. That might be a special kind of hell. And I try to, be nice to everyone. But I have definitely sent emails where I'm like, how dare you do this? I hate you and do better. Not in those terms, but pretty close.
I actually, it probably brings much more awareness though, also from a, like, just a trans rights, trans issues standpoint. Like, if you're willing to share that about yourself, and I mean, something that I probably should work on is just, I'm visible enough. I feel like I'm able to be visible. I'm one of those people. I should be able to stand up and say, hey, this isn't right, that that you guys don't treat people correctly. Or when they do, say, hey, you guys, this is amazing. You are doing the things that you're supposed to be doing. And I really appreciate that. And make it so that they recognize, hopefully, other people then can feel like they're welcome there.
Yeah. I feel like that's part. Mentioned my Instagram on at the start of the show. I try to just be like, I'm living my life. And like, I will be honest, the reason that I started my Instagram was kind of as a open diary for my transition, because it helped me get my thoughts out. It helped me like work through some things. And I happened to meet just like a fantastic group of people along the way. And some of the people I've made friends with in the last 2 years on Instagram, I would do pretty much anything for. And like, they're my, my ride or dies. And I found some very special people online, but very quickly I realized it's like, well, I want to tell my story, but I also want it to be like, being trans is just part of what my story is. And even though it's what sort of gave me the words to put myself out there, it was also like, hey, also I enjoy cooking. And so I did, I started my Instagram cooking show that is on a summer hiatus, but it's coming back in the fall. And I also love hiking and going for walks, and I took up running, and I love to podcast now because I'm a podcaster as well. And like, all these things that sort of came out of my transition and came out of just sort of sharing myself felt really natural. And I think that, before, when I was in the closet, so much of my brain was just like devoted to keeping down those thoughts, keeping down those trans thoughts. Like, don't think about it, repress this, bury this, this will ruin your life. Don't come out. And like, so much of my brain was being used to hold those back, that by the time I came out and I wasn't like spending so much energy keeping that door shut, my brain was just like, oh, I've got ideas, and I want to do things, and I want to talk to people. And that just it felt like, without sounding as cheesy as possible, well, I'll sound as cheesy as possible. Why not? Once my egg cracked, I really like stretched out, and there was a lot more room to do stuff. I live in metaphors. I don't know why I fight it. That's just
I love that. I mean, I love that. And I actually, on a previous episode, Jen Giggles is on, and we spend almost the entire episode talking about Marvel Comics and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And we happen to be trans as one of her podcasts.
I'm familiar.
Like,
yeah.
What a great, a great thing. Yeah. And, so much of the idea of being trans isn't necessarily all of who we are. It's just a part of who we are. And it's such a great thing to remind everybody that, like, it feels, especially at the beginning of transition, like trans is like the most important thing in your life at the moment. But the longer it goes, the more it's all of a sudden you get to kind of focus on the things you want to do. And I have a similar experience where all of a sudden, like, after coming out, my whole life changed, and things were like, ideas and possibilities were all of a sudden endless. And it was no longer like I'm just focused on getting through the day, and I was more focused on, what am I going to do next week? I want to get to next week. How do I get to that, that next step? And what I'm doing next week is really important. I want to, whether it be starting a podcast or getting back into the off-road racing world, or, photography because I've really gotten into photography again. So the things that like really mean the most to me are now being able to take center stage, and that's an awesome feeling.
It's so good. It's so fun. And I just, I don't know. Yeah, you're right. Like coming out opened up so much more room in my heart and in my mind to have other experiences that like never mind transitioning, which with its own experiences of starting HRT and, having, the whole coming out process and relationships and friendships and all those things. It's just like now I'm also like interested in learning about new things. And I think the one that is the most surprising is horror movies, which is what my podcast that I do is all about horror movies. And the show is called Nothing to Fear because we are watching the horror movies and seeing that they're not as scary as we thought they were. And like for me, that name has a deeper meaning because the scariest thing I ever did was admitting I was trans, coming out, and transitioning. And after I did the scariest thing I could think of, there's no way a movie could hold a candle to that. So now I'm just like, what do you got, movies? Like, you're a scary movie about a slasher? Okay, nice. I came out, like, so I think that's for me, that makes me, more excited to talk about that. And I'm really liking horror movies now. Like, I never thought I'd be a person who's like, I can't wait to watch a scary movie. Like, bring it on.
That is awesome. I love the double meaning. That is so cool. I mean, it's true though. If you think about coming out and just living, which it's bad that that's the case, but living your true self and living authentically is definitely one of the scariest things any of us do. Just being willing to go out in public and be yourself, knowing how dangerous and how much can go wrong. It's a great kind of premise to think about. Like, if you can do this, you can literally do anything. And you really have nothing to fear.
You can do anything. Yay. You said it.
All right. Well,
do you like horror movies at all?
No, not really. I've just never been like a huge and maybe it's because I haven't really watched them since I started coming out. But prior to transition and HRT specifically, like emotions in general were just like so subdued for me that like any horror movie or even like comedies, like I just didn't really appreciate them. Like I would sit there and watch them, and I'd be sitting watching with friends and they'd all be laughing or jumping or whatever, and I would just be like so dead that like it was like I was sleeping during them or something. And I haven't really had a need to watch them since, so I don't know. It would be interesting. I was just talking about that with someone the other day though. She was talking about watching, I don't remember what exactly it was, but she brought up the TV series Criminal Minds. And I do know that I don't appreciate that series because it feels so real on a regular basis. Like, they do such a good job of like keeping the like reality in check that like it literally scares me. Like I don't want to watch that kind of show and I love it. I think it's a great TV show. They did a really good job with it, but like the storylines are so real. And it like, I was a criminology major when I was in college, so I totally understand like the thought process of the criminal mind. And I was also a sociology major, so like all of those things really intrigue me, which is why the TV show is so intriguing. But it also is just so real that it scares me. I can't do it at night. Like if I try to go to sleep after watching that show, I literally can't.
Oh, really? Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I used to be like that. I remember, not so much with Criminal Minds, although I have seen a couple seasons of that show, and I remember enjoying it. But specifically for horror movies, it would be something that would scare me so much, and I would dwell on it, and I would think about it, and then it would keep me up at night. And now, like nowadays, I'm just like, oh, this is a movie. If I think about this at all, there is a craft services table like 10 feet away from everybody at any point in time, and there's a camera and a director and someone having a fit in their trailer, and that like takes a lot of the sting out of the scary things that are happening on the screen. But that's interesting what you said about emotions being heightened after HRT, because I found that I got the crying down pat. Like, I was always a big crier growing up. You know, people used to always give me shit. Can I swear? If not, I'll take another take. Is swearing okay?
Yes, that's fine.
All right.
That's fine.
You know, I used to always
I'm good with it.
I used to always get in trouble for swearing or for crying. You know, it was like, boys don't cry. Like, be a man, man up. You shouldn't cry. Like, cowboy up. Rah, rah, rah. And I was just like, I sort of locked those away. And then, like, I would cry when I got stressed or angry. And that always made me feel bad. And so then, like, once I started HRT and, like, my emotions crept back in, I was crying at all sorts of things. Like, I've cried at TV commercials, for goodness sake, and it's just like, oh my god, it's so beautiful. And it's wild that has turned on. Like, I've had my emotions, I think, dialed up to 11 out of 10, and it means that I laugh really easily, but also I can, like, hit the sads also, you know, hard.
Yeah, I had the exact same idea, and I think I talked about it, I think, in a previous episode about I always explain it, like, from an emotional standpoint. My emotional spectrum pre-HRT was like a 1950s black and white TV, and my emotional spectrum post-HRT is like a HD 1080p 4K TV. And like the difference between those two, and it's amazing to think about, like, that type of emotional spectrum. And so, like, I can only imagine if I actually watched a horror movie how I would actually respond at this point. I probably wouldn't hate it. It just would definitely I would have a different response than I've had in the past.
Fair enough.
I do think, though, that my response to Criminal Minds in general is more just because, like, I hear there's a craft table right around the corner, but the stories themselves within that show are just so realistic that oftentimes is very easy to forget that, like, there's a craft table in that story, but that doesn't mean that there's not somebody right around the corner doing the exact same thing in real life. Whereas, like, I feel like most horror movies, it's a lot easier to kind of keep that reality in check. It's a lot easier to remember, like, this is just a movie.
Yeah. It's just a movie.
Maybe that's just me, though. I don't know.
Maybe. Have there been other genres of movie that you've watched post HRT that you're like, oh, I like these now where I didn't before? I guess I'm asking the questions now.
Well, comedies are definitely something. Yeah, that's all right. Comedies are definitely something that, for me personally, that all of a sudden, like, I really enjoy watching comedies. Still, like, I hate Will Ferrell. I'm gonna say it. I'm probably gonna lose a ton of subscribers and followers because I'm gonna say that.
This call
I
is
just think
over.
that Will Ferrell tries way too hard to be funny. SNL, hilarious.
Yeah.
Celebrity Jeopardy, best thing he ever did. But most of his movies, I don't appreciate them.
Okay.
But in general, though, comedies, I have found, like, I actually laugh, and I laugh way harder than I've ever laughed at different things. And I can think about that, like, before, how I would laugh and what I would laugh at was just next to nothing. What about you? Do you have any, aside from, I mean, horror movies obviously is a big part of it, but
Horror movies.
anything else?
I've noticed, I've always been a huge fan of animated movies. Like, I love Disney Pixar movies. Some of the DreamWorks stuff I haven't really got into, but I am usually a big fan of animation, and I think they do a really great job, and the stories are exciting and interesting. And I have felt those movies a lot more. Like, there's always the joke about Pixar movies where it's like, this movie will make you cry. It's a Pixar movie. Here you go. And I always, like, I could tell there's emotion in these movies. I was like, yes, I am looking at this movie. This movie has emotion in it. That is interesting. Okay, moving on. And that's how clinical I would be. And then, to the point where when people would share stories about, like, for example, the opening to Up, about how that is, a complete heart-wrenching opening. No spoilers, I guess, just in case people haven't seen it. But I would always be like, yeah, I know. I also cried in that movie. Lie. And then I watched it recently being on HRT, and it was just like, oh my God, their love was so pure. And just like sobbing openly at these movies. And it's just like, I feel things more deeply now.
While I have not seen Up, I've seen the beginning scene a few times in different things, not related to watching the movie, actually. I totally get that. Pre-HRT, I would have done the same thing. Like, oh yeah, I totally cried during that. Not at all. And then now HRT, all of a sudden, like, that is like a legitimate thing that I would cry to and have cried to, even though I haven't seen the movie. It's probably why I haven't seen the movie, because of that beginning opening scene, and I've seen it seen it in other areas, and just like, I have no need to put myself through that. There's actually a movie, it's called Soldier's Girl, and when I first started transitioning, a friend of mine recommended it to me. It is a true story. And it is about a transgender woman who is dating a man in the military.
Okay.
And it takes place in the late 90s, right around the time the U.S. military was really kind of ramping up the don't ask, don't tell stuff.
Sure, yeah.
Which in itself is its own problem. But at the end is extremely sad. And you can imagine how the direction the movie goes. It's not a great ending. It's, again, based on a true story. The person who the story is based on has refused to talk about it publicly most of her life.
Wow.
You can look it up, Soldier's Girl. It's a really great movie. It's a great kind of, if you think about like the struggles of transgender women and kind of the stigma around us, I think that it's a great way to kind of approach that subject. But it's also just a really true story and sad. And the first time I watched it was about a month before I started HRT.
Okay.
And I've watched it a few times since HRT, and like the end I was certainly upset about, but I didn't cry. And now every time I watch it, I start crying at the end. And so it's a really like that thought process, even that like, there's a specific story, a specific instance that I saw and heard, and before HRT and then after HRT, and I was able to connect to it beforehand. There's several moments in it that you just are like, wow, I can't, like, this is almost an attack on who I am. Like, you feel like you're in the movie, that it's all about you.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a really good movie. I think they did a good job from a film standpoint of kind of keeping the story important and what happened important. But I mean, you can Wikipedia it. You'll see all of the information about it.
Okay.
Anyone that's listening that wants to check it out, I highly recommend it as a movie to watch. For anybody that wants to kind of know what it's like to be transgender, and keep in mind it's in the 90s, so a lot has changed in the world since then. And obviously, don't ask, don't tell is no longer even a thing. And now, in the U.S. at least, transgender people are again allowed to be out in the military and not have any issues. And so, like, certainly things have changed, but it's also, like, really eye-opening from a perspective of being that transgender person, or even being someone dating a transgender person and kind of their perspective as well. So,
Soldier's Girl.
Very interesting movie,
okay.
but very sad at the end, so be prepared to cry.
Oh.
Yeah, Soldier's Girl is
Okay.
what it's called.
I'll go in well-armed.
Again, based on a true story, so... Definitely not a horror movie, so I don't know if you'll be reviewing it on your podcast.
Probably not.
Good. I think it's a great movie, and like I said, a friend recommended it to me. I'm really glad she did. I've had several opportunities to watch it since then, and definitely worthwhile.
Awesome. Wow. There you go. Soldier's Girl. I should check it out. I may not, because I don't know. I watch movies a lot, and you know what? I'll put it on my list. You know what? I'll put it on my list. It's gonna happen. Maybe. Possibly.
I'll be honest. I I've had a really tough time finding it. The only way I was able to find it was I had a friend download it off the internet. So I don't know where to get it at. Otherwise, I can't. So I can't recommend anybody
Any streaming platform
or anywhere to anyone to get it. Yep. It's kind of I don't think it's not a mainstream movie, but again, they did a really good job with it. And got the true story out. It's not like they didn't take a lot of liberties with it, which is always nice.
I wonder if you can download it or rent it off of YouTube. We've done that a few times for the show, where it's just like, we can't find this movie streaming anywhere. Well, $2.99 on YouTube.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe. I might have seen it on like Amazon or one of those other places that you can like rent.
Right.
Like Google Play might have it as well. I don't know. I haven't really looked.
We haven't looked. Other streaming
platforms
at least,
I haven't
are
looked,
available. So. Yeah. Cool. Well,
possibly. All right. Well, Billy, do you have any final thoughts or piece of advice for the listeners?
Listeners, you're doing great. Whether you are trans or you're learning how to be a good trans ally or just a general ally in the LGBT community, I think it's important work that needs to be done, and a lot of people are doing a great job. And everyone just be willing to keep going forward. I know a lot of people in my orbit when I came out were like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to like have these conversations. And that is okay if you're going slowly. As long as you're going forward, I think that is very, very important as an ally. Like, progress is slow. Progress is not always linear. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess it up. And just say sorry and move on and don't dwell on it and do better next time. That's to allies. To trans people who are listening, there's not one way to be trans. If somebody is telling you that there's only one way to be trans, then they are straight up lying to you. There's as many different ways to transition as there are trans people, and your way is beautiful and magical and worth celebrating. So I don't know. I didn't really share too much about my story. I think it's kind of ho-hum in its way. I thought a long time, am I trans? I ignored the fact that I was trans for a lot of years, and then eventually I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And I've experienced nothing but good things on the other side of it. All of my deepest fears that I was worried about, they never really materialized. I've absolutely had heartbreak and setbacks and lost people in my life because of transitioning, but what I've gained on the other side is so much more valuable and so much more worth it and so much more lovely and fulfilling than I ever thought was possible. So just go do it if you're thinking about it.
I like that. Just go do it.
Just go do it.
I think the big thing that I would like to just add to that is we all have very unique stories. Mm-hmm. And like you said, everybody's transition and everybody is trans in their own way is 100% accurate. And while I have all of these different guests on the podcast sharing their stories, I promise everybody's going to be able to connect in some way to each one of them. Mm-hmm. And so while you are unique, they're all always in some way intertwined with each other, which I think is also really cool.
Yeah, and don't worry that you're transitioning different than somebody else. There are some parts that you will model off of other people, and that'll fit your style and that'll fit your journey, and there will be some parts where you deviate wildly, and I think that's great. A lot of times, I remember early on, I was like, but this person started hormones at this time, and I'm not doing it at that time. Am I doing it wrong? No, I'm not. I was just doing it my way.
Oh, so true. And listen to as many stories as you can, because they're all going to give you something. And you don't have to copy. Like, if you only hear one, you're going to only want to copy one.
Exactly.
Listen to as many as you can. See as many as you can. There's thousands of them on Instagram. You can find them all.
So many people. Yep.
This podcast is going to share a few of those.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Billy.
Yeah, thanks so much.
I appreciate you coming on.
All right. I'm going to do my plugs now. You said I could wait.
Did you want to do some plugs real quick?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Go ahead.
yes, my podcast is called Nothing to Fear. It's a weekly horror movie podcast. I host that with my two good friends, Alex and Luke, and it is a great fun time. Even if you don't like horror movies, I think the chats are good and the conversations are fun, and it is so much fun to make. I also have a presence on Instagram. I am at Billy by Design. That's my handle. I before E when spelling Billy, and there are underscores between the words. And I post about my journey on there. I'm taking a little bit of a break from Instagram, depending on when this comes out. At the time of recording, I'm not on there so much, but I also do a cooking show called Queer and Teen Kitchen, which I started in the depths of the lockdown, the pandemic, and you can find out the information for that on my Instagram as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Billy. I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks for listening. Remember to subscribe to hear more amazing stories. And to share your own story, you can always reach me on Instagram at trans_connections_podcast or email me at transconnectionspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time on Trans Connections.